Hello everyone. This is Mr. Big T Anderson, and fan fiction reading, kind of more like mythological something chat, something. Screw it, we're talking about Greek myth. Let's go! So, we're gonna do, let's see, how are we gonna cut this? Let's do... Oh, those two are... We'll do that, and we'll get into the story of Persephone. Sounds good. So, in some families, especially some of the old sitcoms, you'll have like the two older sister types. Those would be probably Hestia and Demeter. Hestia is... She's technically... she is like a sister of Zeus. Born to Cronus and Rhea. So she's on that level. But she's... While Mr. Lightning Bolt up there is the All-Father, she is Queen of the Sacred Fire. So. Hers is the hearth, really. So. Basically what keeps everything warm and comfy and not freezing at her work. Now, Demeter, hers is a little bit different. She doesn't have anything. And Hestia never had an actual altar because Hestia's legend went that because every home had a hearth, that was technically their altar. But Demeter is one of the goddesses of the crops. Wheat, barley, oats, right? The grub crops. So, basically, if you were starving, you want to talk to her. Now, she did have a little bit of time with Zeus, and Zeus was being Zeus. And Hera is not happy with this, but that's how Persephone came about. So, Demeter and Zeus had their moment. Persephone was born. Zeus promised his brother Hades Persephone as his bride. Hades is the lord of the underworld. So, Persephone was out gathering flowers, and because of being a daughter of Demeter, she knew nymphs and was fairly well liked in the Garden of the Gods. Gaia, the earth, put forth a new flower, never before seen, of a special beauty, the narcissus flower. And the sweetness of its fragrance made the earth smile, the seas laugh aloud. Persephone, straying from her friends, found the precious flower, but when she reached out her hand for that pale bloom, the earth split open, and Hades emerged on his chariot and snatched her away. The maiden's cries to her father fell on deaf ears. No one heard her, none of the gods, save Hecate in her distant cave, conjuring spirits, and in a moment, Persephone's screams of terror faded as Hades bore her down into the depths of the underworld. But at last, faint cry came to her ears of her mother, borne by a kindly wind. Demeter lit 2 torches in the fires of Etna, and for 9 days she roamed the broad earth over hill and dale, denying herself sleep and rest, but nowhere was her daughter to be found. I actually have this somewhere, so I can read this for you. All she found was a bunch of dried narcissus blossoms lying on the healed earth. Poseidon took advantage of her distress to press his suit, and when Demeter changed herself into a mare to avoid his attentions, he became a stallion and had his way. Greek myth is not nice. In due course of time, she gave birth to a wonderful stallion called Orion, and a daughter whose name is known only to the initiated. On the 10th day, somber Hecate came and told her what little she knew, that her daughter had been abducted. Together they went to Helios, the sun god, who sees all, and he explained that it was the will of Zeus that Persephone should be the bride of Hades, and consoled her with the thought that Zeus's equal was no mean husband for her daughter. But Demeter was not to be consoled, nor was she of a mind to give up. She wanted nothing now to do with the gods of Olympus, who had betrayed her and her daughter. She disguised herself as immortal, roamed over the earth ceaselessly in grief and despair. Only Hesperus, the evening star, could persuade her to quench her parched throat with a little water. For mother and daughter are inseparable and are ever worshipped together. At last she came to Eleusis, where Celeus was king, and seated herself by the maiden's well in the shade of an olive tree. There came to the well to collect water there the daughters of Celeus, and they addressed her with the respect due to her venerable years, for Demeter had disguised herself as an elderly woman named Doso, a refugee from pirates, and in this matronly guise she begged for work. Lovely Calidus answered her, "Our mother Metanera has but lately borne a son. No one in this town would turn you away, for your demeanor is stately and godlike. But let me ask her. She would appreciate help in rearing our brother Demephone." When the girls returned from the well, Metanera was delighted and told them to bring Doso back home, and the goddess followed her, her heart grieving and her head veiled. But when she stood in the doorway, Metanera looked up and for a moment saw her as a goddess, only to dismiss the vision. The weeks and months passed, and the goddess's tender care of the babe grew bonny and blithe. For the day, Demeter anointed him with divine ambrosia, and at night she buried him in the embers of the fire, for she knew how to make him immortal. Her heart was filled with the joy of tending to the boy, though she yearned ceaselessly for her own daughter. But one night, Metanera saw Demeter burying her son in the coals and screamed out loud for sheer terror. In fury, Demeter snatched the boy from the fire and cast him aside. "Fools! Ignorant mortals! I would have made your son deathless, but now he shall be no more blessed than others, except that he has been nursed by a goddess. For I am Demeter, and all worship me." And she commanded the people of Eleusis to build her a temple where her mysteries would be celebrated for all time. But Demeter mourned her missing daughter with fresh tears, and devised a terrible punishment for gods and men. Crops were stillborn in the barren soil, or if they appeared at all, it was only to wither with blight. First their cattle died, then their sheep and goats, and then human beings themselves were starving. Moreover, the gods were not receiving their due in sacrifices, for there was nothing for men to give. This was intolerable to Zeus. He sent many-hued Iris, the rainbow messenger of the gods, arcing down to where Demeter sent in Eleusis. "Come back," implored Iris. "Let Zeus the cloud-gatherer make you welcome once more in the high halls of Olympus." But Demeter hardened her heart and shut her ears. She vowed that she would never again tread the paths of Olympus unless she could do so with her daughter at her side. So, taking matters in hand, Zeus sent swift-daring Hermes to escort Persephone out of the underworld and into the light of day to rejoin her mother. "Come with me, or all mortal men will perish, whose lives are but the shadow of a dream, and the gods will have no one to honor them," Hermes said. Hades understood and turned to his bride, who was seated beside him as befits the queen of the underworld, but still in her heart she pined for her mother. "Go, my dear, console your sorrowing mother, and when you return, you shall have high honor as my wife." But he did not entirely trust her to return of her own accord, and he gave her the sweet seed of a pomegranate to eat, the forbidden food of the dead, so that she was bound to come back and not to dwell forever on Olympus with her dark-cloaked mother. Hades loaned Hermes his own chariot, and Hermes sped with Persephone by his side. The reunion of mother and daughter was joyful and tearful, as may be imagined, but suddenly Demeter pulled out of their embrace, sensing a trick. "Tell me, daughter, did you eat anything while you were there? If you did not, you'll be free to dwell with me and the immortal gods forever on Olympus. If you ate even the slightest morsel, you are bound to return. Live as Hades' bride in the underworld for a third of every year, for so the fates have ordained it, and for that time the soil shall be barren in its mourning." And so it was. Demeter returned to Olympus, and the fields began once more to produce their rich harvest. and Triptolemus, the son of Celeus, received from her the gift of agriculture, became her missionary. On a chariot drawn by dragons, he traveled the earth, teaching man how to cultivate the soil. But the time comes every year when Persephone goes back to dread Hades and takes her seat beside him as the bride, with somber Hecate as her handmaid. While on earth the fruits begin to fade and the leaves of the trees fall. But when she returns to the light of Olympus and the upper world, the flowers bloom afresh, roots spread deep and wide in the fertile soil. So Demeter has the respect of the gods who live on Olympus and dwells there forever in high honor. Once she took a human lover, Aeson. But that's another story. So, that would be the whole story of Persephone. Persephone was the daughter of Demeter, and that's actually the story of the seasons. It was, and depending on how the myth was read, while Persephone was waiting, she ate 6 seeds of a pomegranate, and she had to go down for half a year. So, depending on how it is, you may get different length of time, but it was a pomegranate, so hopefully you enjoy that. I think next time, there are always different things with these that always make me kind of wonder, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. Next time we're going to go over Aphrodite, and probably one of my favorite legends, one of my favorite myths, and Ares! Just because. So, tell me what you think. If you have any references of the goddesses Demeter, Hestia, or Persephone, put it below. I love talking about this. So, thank you for listening. Ta-ta for now.